I think it's fair for me to say that Fyodor Dostoevsky is the greatest writer of all time. I like speaking in absolutes, and he's absolutely the best author. Not only are his characters so incredibly rich and complex, but overall, his themes are so vast that quite literally anyone of any demographic could find something to internalize in his works. Today, I'd like to talk about a theme that I don't see referenced that much in many of the online literary spaces that I frequent. Most of the time, I see Dostoevsky as the existentialist and human suffering guy, the black coffee and cigarette combination. But I wanted to draw attention to the theme of compassion, which, in my opinion, is so important to understanding his philosophy. Dostoevsky loved sinners, and if you've read anything by him, a couple of characters have probably already come to mind. In this video, I'd like to discuss a few of these characters. A couple disclaimers. No, I have not read The Idiot. I've read 4 out of Dostoevsky's big 5, but I have not read The Idiot, so there will be no Idiot discussion here. Yes, I plan to read it. There's just a lot of stuff that I've got to get through first. Now, second, I am by no means a scholar. I'm a high school graduate, and as of writing this, I'm not even in college yet. So no, I won't be bringing up how some postmodern French philosopher from the 1970s said something similar, or refer to something as Faustian, because I don't know what that means. I'm just sitting here in front of a camera, talking about the books that I like, and about the characters I like, and the themes that I like. Now, I'd like to start by discussing the character of Marmeladov from Crime and Punishment. Now, Marmeladov is extremely important for a number of reasons, the obvious being being the catalyst for Raskolnikov meeting Sonia, but he's far more important in the context of the novel. To me, Crime and Punishment is about the hygiene of the soul, and the hygiene of your morals, so to speak. We first meet Marmeladov in Part 1, Chapter 2. Raskolnikov meets him in a tavern, and he recites his entire life story about how he drank his family into poverty, which forced his only biological daughter into prostitution. And this confession serves as an act of repentance, and that's what the novel, in its heart, is all about. Now, I'd like to read a passage. Now, I'm going to be reading from the Pavir and Volokonsky translation, and this is, at least for me, on page 24. Pity. Why pity me? Marmeladov suddenly cried out, rising with his hands stretched forth in decided inspiration, as if he had only been waiting for these words. Why pity me, you say? Yes, there's nothing to pity me for. I ought to be crucified on a cross, and not pitied. But crucify, O judge, crucify, and having crucified, pity the man. And then I myself will come to you to be crucified, for I thirst not for joy, but for sorrow and tears. Do you think, wine merchant, that this bottle of yours brought me sweetness? Sorrow I sought at its bottom, sorrow and tears, and I tasted it and found it. And he will pity us who pitied everyone, and who understood all men and all women. He alone, and he is the judge. On that day he will come and ask, where is the daughter who gave herself for a wicked and consumptive stepmother? Where is the daughter who pitied her earthly father, a foul drunkard, not shrinking from his beastliness? And he will come and say, come, I have already forgiven you once. I have forgiven you once. One moment. And now, too, your many sins are forgiven for you have loved much. And he will forgive my Sonia. He will forgive her, I know he will. Today, when I was with her, I felt it in my heart. And he will judge and forgive all, the good and the wicked, the wise and the humble. And when he has finished with everyone, then he will say unto us, you too, come forth. He will say, come forth, my drunk ones, my weak ones, my shameless ones. And he will come forth without being ashamed and stand there. And he will say, swine you are, of the image of the beast and of his seal. But come, you too. And the wise and the reasonable will say unto him, Lord, why do I receive such as these? And he will say, I receive them, my wise ones, and my reasonable ones, for as much as not one of them considered himself worthy of this thing. And he will stretch out his arms to us, and we will fall down at his feet and weep, and understand everything. Then we will understand everything, and everyone will understand. And Katerina Ivanovna, she too will understand. Lord, thy kingdom come. Though relating to Dostoevsky's own personal faith, which was Russian Orthodoxy, I think that this passage still carries with it the idea that sinners are worthy. Marmeladov seems to have been slightly based on Dostoevsky himself, who was a gambling addict and pawned off all of his wife's belongings multiple times. One could come to the conclusion that him writing this character was a sort of repentance, him repenting for all of the sins that he's committed. And I think that that's why the idea of sin and redemption is so pervasive in his works. Dostoevsky viewed himself as a sinner all of his life, and he hated it, and he suffered for this. So he wrote these characters as a love letter to all of the sinners who didn't believe that they were worthy. Shifting topics entirely, I'd like to move on to the next character. It's a group of characters, the liberals from Demons. Politically, Dostoevsky was reactionary and opposed many forms of liberalism that were gaining traction in the 1860s in Russia. But I've met good people on the right and good people on the left, so please don't take his political beliefs as a sort of statement on his morals. In fact, in the 1840s, he joined a liberal reading circle because of his passionate support for the abolition of the serfs of Russia. Dostoevsky was a huge fan of the Russian peasants and the folk sort of traditions. The group he belonged to, the Petrushevsky Circle, was a utopian socialist club, and they were really into the works of Fourier, the utopian ideas of his. While they themselves didn't commit any acts of terrorism, a lot of people following this movement at the time, the Russian radicals, did. And Dostoevsky, sort of caught up in all of this, became disillusioned with the idea of social reform. This led him to the belief that people with the best of intentions and ideas of improvement can be led astray, and this is exemplified the most in his book Demons. Liberals, specifically the Group of Five, Dostoevsky portrays people who, whether he agreed with or not, wanted to do the right thing. When grooming them to do things they morally object to, Pyotr Stepanovich Verkovensky appeals to their desire to help the cause, as it were, and liberalize Russia. I cannot emphasize how important it is for you to remember that these people wanted to do the right thing. Maybe they were wrong. Dostoevsky thought so, and yet believed that a factor in judging the soul was intent. And they had good intent. I have a couple passages to read out, starting with what is in my edition, the McGuire translation, page 609. "No, we're ready to act," Liputin announced. "There's no other way out," Tolkachenko mumbled. "And if Liputin will confirm, Krylov, that I'm opposed. With all my soul, I protest against such a bloody decision." Virginsky got up from his chair. "But?" Pyotr Stepanovich asked. "What do you mean, but?" "You said but, and I'm waiting." "Well, I don't think I said but. I only wanted to say that if the others decide on it, then... Virginsky fell silent. "I think one can ignore danger to one's life," Urkel suddenly opened his mouth. "But if the common cause suffers, then I think one shouldn't dare ignore danger to one's own life." He grew flustered and red. Preoccupied, as they all were, with their own ideas, everyone still looked at him in astonishment. So little did they expect that he too could venture an opinion. "I'm for the common cause," Virginsky suddenly intoned. Everyone rose from his chair. It was decided that they would communicate again the next day at noon, although they would not all get together and come to a final agreement. Virginsky is clearly opposed to the murder of Shatov. The only thing that causes him to commit to the plan is the groupthink being applied here, and the appeal to the common cause. Next on page 742, again relating to Virginsky, "One hears that he's now giving evidence without constraint, albeit with a certain dignity, and isn't retreating from a single one of his bright hopes, while at the same time cursing the political direction, in contrast to the social, into which he was so unexpectedly and naively enticed by the whirlwind of concurrent circumstances. His behavior at the time of the murder has been a mitigating light, and apparently he too can count on a certain mitigation of his sentence. That, at least, is what is maintained here in town." Finally, a quote about our little cutie Urkel on page 636. "Urkel was the sort of stupid little fool who was short on sense of the higher sort, but he had enough sense for an underling, even to the point of cunning. Fanatically, childishly devoted to the common cause, and specifically to Pyotr Stepanovich, he acted according to his instructions, which had been given him at the meeting of our people, when they had come to an agreement and parceled out the roles for the following day. In assigning him the role of envoy, Pyotr Stepanovich had managed to take him aside and chat with him for about 10 minutes. This shallow, mindless nature, which constantly thirsted to subordinate itself to another person's will, had a need to see orders through." Where have I heard that one? "Oh, no! For no other reason, of course, than for the sake of a common or great cause. But even this didn't matter, because petty fanatics like Urkel are utterly incapable of understanding service to an idea other than by conflating it with the very individual who, as they understand it, gives expression to this idea. Why do good people do bad things? Just kidding. That's a stupid question that I'm not going to ask you. But when I read these passages just now, didn't you feel just a twinge of empathy and sorrow on these people's behalves? I mean, look at Lyamshin, the little Jew character. Dostoevsky wasn't perfect. Best right away. Look at Virginsky, who ran all over town to spread the word that Shatov was now a father and shouldn't be murdered. I mean, he did all he could to try and prevent the murder. And then when he came down with an illness, he instantly felt better, like a weight was dropped from his heart. Do these characters seem like villains to you? Of course, I have to talk about accountability and how these people did associate themselves with a murder, and I am not defending their actions. I'm simply calling them sinners, and how we have to have compassion for them. Dostoevsky didn't do straw men. He didn't like demonizing his opponents, and he didn't like to take down easy targets. He often gave his atheists really good arguments and portrayed the liberals as, if not a little buffoonish, as definitely well-meaning. Now, Pyotr Verkovensky doesn't count here because he even admits that he couldn't give a rat's ass about politics and that he's just a political self-seeker that just wants to stomp on people and take advantage of their well-meaning beliefs. Dostoevsky saw his country as possessed and diseased by ideas that he disagreed with, but you can't just throw out the followers of those ideas and expect society to just be perfect. But you can educate them, and you can urge them to rehabilitate themselves. You can offer them redemption. I'd like to take a moment to discuss Dostoevsky's attitude towards prisoners and convicts. Dostoevsky himself was sentenced to hard labor for 4 years in Siberia after being found out as a member of the aforementioned Utopian Reading Circle. And here at this labor camp, he was introduced to all sorts of people who've been hardened by labor and crime. But he found them so incredibly human. As a member of the upper middle class, Dostoevsky had never been so close with the common people. And while imprisoned, he kept a notebook of all of their little sayings and adages. And he would use them in his later books. Needless to say, Dostoevsky was a huge Slavophile and very often expressed his love for the Russian peasantry, or the muziks, as they were referred to. I mean, Crime and Punishment was literally supposed to be a poverty piece, with Marmeladov as the main character. It was a poverty piece about the slums of Petersburg. If you've read any of his books, and I know you have, you'll recall his love for the common Russian people. But this is probably going to be the most controversial part of the video. This is going to be where I talk about everybody's favorite little kitty cat murderer, Smerdyakov. The Dostoevsky fandom must have completely forgotten about the theme of compassion because you guys have not shown a drop of it to our poor little Pavel. I mean, have you seen the fan art that people make of him? I mean, they make him look so ugly and stupid, and it honestly kind of upsets me. All of Dostoevsky's villains that I've come to know, I think that Smerdyakov is the least evil. I mean, he's a murderer and an animal abuser, but compared to Dostoevsky's other villains, I mean, Svidrigailov, I think our little guy is just a little troubled. And why is he troubled? Is it because he's the product of rape? Of a mentally challenged woman, no less, who died after giving birth to him? Is it because he was smacked around, never given a proper education, never accepted anywhere, forced to be a servant to his very ravenous father? Is it because not one of the 3 main characters of this book ever once refer to him as their brother? I mean, Marmeladov says that everyone must have some place to turn to, and Smerdyakov never had a single place to call home. So why is the prevalence of compassion in Dostoevsky's books so prevalent? And I think, and this is just my personal opinion, that Dostoevsky saw a world devoid of love beginning to sprout. A world that was rapidly becoming individualistic and He saw this as the downfall of society, because of course it is. Of course a world without love is going to be dark and scary and evil. And I think that a case could be made for our modern world being very similar. I mean, we're becoming increasingly individualistic, and wouldn't you say that we're losing at least a little smidge of empathy? Love a man, even in his sin, for that love is a likeness of the divine love, and is the summit of love on earth. Dostoevsky said this, and I think it sums up what I've been trying to say here. The greatest love you can show is love for a sinner. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to make a little video about something I've been wanting to talk about for a little while. Sorry I didn't go that much in depth for each individual character, and I'm sorry if I left your favorite character out. I know there's one person who's going to be pretty upset with me that I didn't reference Fedka the convict from Demons. If you'd love a character study of a specific character, or if you have any idea for any analysis, let me know. I'd love to hear your feedback. And I'm actually reading The Master and Margarita right now, and I plan on leaving a review for it. You know, what I think. I mean, of course it's good, but, you know, what do I have to say about it? And I'll leave that here on YouTube. And I just want you to remember, as the audience, that Smerdyakov is not ugly. And if you think he is, you can honestly eat a bag of dicks.